At that moment Steve kissed me. It wasn't sudden. It was slow, careful, like we were both testing how far we were willing to go. His lips found mine and stayed. Gentle. Searching. Hungry. The couch wasn't enough. He lifted me as if I were made of paper. Carried me upstairs like a man who'd done it 1,000 times in his dreams. We passed her room on the way. I didn't look. In my room. He laid me down like I was something delicate. Sacred. Like what we were doing wasn't wrong. But it was. Every second. Every breath. Every trembling hand. It wasn't love. It was escape. It was brokenness reaching out for something that felt whole. And in the dark, with his body pressed against mine, I let go of everything I thought I was. For one night. One night I'll never forget. One night that shouldn't have happened. Miriam, what you done to yourself? Hello everyone. Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, do well to subscribe and hit on notifications. To all my returning subscribers, thank you for always watching my videos. They say you know when something's wrong, you feel it before it happens. Maybe not in words, but in your bones. A shift. A silence. A look that lingers too long. That was how it started with Steve. When Mom married him, I was still recovering from Dad. Dan, my real father, left more than a gap in our family. He left pieces. Shards. And Steve. He stepped in like a man with glue in his hands and good intentions in his smile. He was different from Dan. Dan was a storm, Steve was a breeze. A college professor who liked jazz and poetry and almond tea. He was soft-spoken, intelligent, and paid attention in a way most men didn't. Especially to me. First it felt safe. He'd ask about my books. My lectures. Sit with me while I studied and talk about philosophy or Shakespeare. I liked it being seen. Heard. It was more than my mother gave me, to be honest. She was too busy being Chef Maria. The face on TV. The one with her own line of olive oil and cookware. She flew more than she cooked at home. And Steve became the one I spent the most time with. I remember the day I noticed the warmth changing. It was small. Insignificant, really. I'd just come back from the gym, still in a tank top and shorts. Steve was reading in the living room, legs crossed, a cup of tea beside him. You're glowing today, he said, looking up from his book. From sweat, I laughed. He didn't laugh back. He just looked. Then looked away too quickly, like he caught himself thinking something he shouldn't. After that, the air between us started to shift. He complimented me more. The way I smiled. How I carried myself. I brushed it off at first, polite flattery from an older man. But then came the longer stares when he thought I wasn't looking. The way he stood too close in the kitchen. The way his hand would rest on my shoulder and stay there just a second too long. Still I ignored it. I told myself I was imagining things. That I was projecting some twisted version of closeness because I'd never had it with Dan. Or because Mom was always somewhere else, and Steve was just filling the space she left behind. But one night proved me wrong. It was late. Rain tapping against the windows. I was on the couch watching some crime documentary. Steve walked in with 2 mugs of hot chocolate. I hadn't even asked for one. You looked cold, he said, setting the cup in my hands. He sat beside me. Too close. His leg pressed against mine. I shifted, but he didn't. I like having you here, Miriam, he said, his voice lower than usual. You bring something this house didn't have before. I swallowed hard. What's that? He looked at me like I was the answer. And that's when I felt it, the flicker. That sharp, electric moment when attention crosses over into something else. Something darker. Something dangerous. My stomach flipped. My heart stuttered. But I didn't move. I didn't run. Because a part of me, God help me, wanted more of that attention. Craved it like someone starving for affection. I'd never admit it then, but I can now. It wasn't love. It wasn't even desire. It was the thrill of being wanted. Even if it was wrong. Especially because it was wrong. You know how silence can feel loud? Like it's saying everything no one dares to speak? That's what our house became. A place full of unspoken things. Too quiet. Too careful. A place where every glance meant something and every brush of skin could set the whole room on fire. Mom didn't notice. Not really. She was always moving. Always preparing for her next show or event. She lived in a world of deadlines and dinners for people who called her darling, but never knew what kept her up at night. If she noticed the way Steve and I moved around each other, like magnets flipping between attraction and resistance, she didn't show it, but I felt it every day. Steve was subtle. He never said anything out loud. But he didn't have to. It was the way he looked at me when I entered the room. The way his eyes followed me, then quickly looked away when I caught them. The way he always seemed to be in the kitchen when I was, or reading in the exact spot I passed through on the stairs. One afternoon I came back from class and found him in the backyard, shirt off, trimming the hedges. It was hot, and I remember pausing just inside the screen door, watching. His body wasn't young, but it was strong, tanned from the sun, arms flexing with each movement. I hated that I stared, hated that I imagined things I shouldn't, that I wondered what it would feel like if he turned and said something bold, something that would change everything. But he didn't. He just wiped sweat from his brow and gave me a smile that looked too innocent. "I thought you'd still be at school," he said. "I got out early," I replied, stepping outside. "Hungry?" "No." "Thirsty?" I paused. "Maybe just a little." He handed me his water bottle. I drank from it, slowly, and for the first time I knew we were dancing around something dangerous. That evening, I caught my reflection in the mirror before dinner. I looked different, older, not in a physical way but in the eyes, like I was living a life that didn't belong to a college sophomore. Mom came home late that night, her arms full of bags and her voice chipper from a wine-tasting event. "I missed you too," she called into the kitchen. Steve went over and kissed her like nothing was wrong, like he hadn't watched me drink from his bottle, like he hadn't touched the small of my back when I passed behind him earlier that day. And I watched it happen, standing by the fridge with a glass of milk I didn't even want. That night I lay in bed with my heart racing. Not from guilt. Not yet. But from tension. Tension from living in a house where shadows were thicker than walls. I heard footsteps outside my room and held my breath. They stopped. Right at my door. Then moved on. I exhaled slowly. I wasn't sure what I was hoping for. That he would walk in, or that he wouldn't. Mom's suitcase sat by the front door, zipped and ready. She was heading upstate for some outdoor cooking retreat, 3 days of grills, cameras, and culinary elites. She kissed Steve on the cheek and gave me a quick hug. "Take care of each other," she said with a bright smile. "Don't burn the house down." I laughed a little too nervously. Steve just nodded and watched her drive away. When the door closed, the silence felt different. Not empty, full. Full of things neither of us dared to say out loud. The air between us was heavy. We moved around each other slowly, cautiously, as if we both sensed what was coming. That night he made dinner. Homemade pasta. Garlic bread. A bottle of wine already breathing on the counter. "I thought we'd treat ourselves," he said with a half smile, not meeting my eyes. I should have said no. I should have gone upstairs. But I didn't. Instead, I wore a dress I hadn't touched in months. One that hugged my body too closely for a dinner with my stepfather. I curled my hair. I told myself it was just for fun, that I didn't care what he thought. But I did. The wine loosened the edges of the evening. We talked, laughed, even like old friends who knew too much about each other. I don't remember most of what we said, just that he kept looking at my mouth when I spoke, and I didn't stop him. After dinner we ended up on the couch. The same one where I'd once watched documentaries beside him, safe and unaware. Now we sat in silence, both pretending to focus on the TV while the tension between us pulsed like a heartbeat. "I've never met anyone like you," he said suddenly. I turned. "What do you mean?" "You're different. Smart. Beautiful. You see through things." I didn't respond. I just looked at him. And in that look was every dangerous thought I'd tried to bury for months. His hand brushed mine. I didn't move. "I think about you," he whispered. "More than I should." I closed my eyes. Every voice in my head screamed to get up, to walk away, to remember who he was, who she was, my mother. But I didn't move, because deep down, some part of me wanted this, needed it. The kiss wasn't sudden. It was slow, careful, like we were both testing how far we were willing to go. His lips found mine and stayed. Gentle. Searching. Hungry. The couch wasn't enough. He lifted me as if I were made of paper. Carried me upstairs like a man who'd done it 1,000 times in his dreams. We passed her room on the way. I didn't look. In my room, he laid me down like I was something delicate, sacred, like what we were doing wasn't wrong. But it was. Every second, every breath, every trembling hand. It wasn't love. It was escape. It was brokenness reaching out for something that felt whole. And in the dark, with his body pressed against mine, I let go of everything I thought I was. For one night. One night I'll never forget. One night that shouldn't have happened. Morning light poured through the curtains like judgment. I woke up tangled in sheets that weren't mine, lying beside a man who wasn't supposed to be there, who was never supposed to touch me. Steve was still asleep, his back to me, breathing slowly, peacefully. Like nothing had shattered the night before. But everything had. I sat up, clutching the blanket to my chest, my heart pounding like it was trying to escape my ribcage. The silence was no longer heavy with tension, it was poisoned, twisted. I couldn't tell where the thrill ended and the shame began. I quietly slipped out of bed, gathered my clothes from the floor, and tiptoed to the bathroom. I turned the faucet on and stared at myself in the mirror. I didn't look like the girl I used to be. I looked like someone I didn't recognize. Someone who had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. I showered in silence, scrubbing at my skin like I could erase the night. But no amount of hot water or soap could clean what I had done. What we had done. I dressed, walked downstairs, made coffee with trembling hands. Steve joined me in the kitchen half an hour later, freshly showered, calm as ever. He kissed my temple like it was normal. Like we were a couple, and this was some kind of shared secret we'd carry forever. I was thinking we could drive out to the lake today, he said. I stared at him. My stomach turned. You really think this is normal? His smile faltered just slightly. Miriam, last night was. Don't, I snapped. Don't make it sound beautiful. Because it wasn't. It was betrayal. We both turned at the sound of a car pulling into the driveway. Mom. Steve's face went pale. I froze, mug still in my hand. She wasn't supposed to be back until tomorrow. Keys jingled. The door opened. Surprise, she called out cheerfully. They wrapped early. Oh my God, I'm starving. Is there any of that garlic bread left from the other night? Her heels clicked against the floor as she moved through the hallway, humming to herself, oblivious. Until she stepped into the kitchen and saw us. The look on her face changed instantly. From cheerful to confused, then from confused to suspicious. Steve quickly moved to pour her coffee. You're back early, he said, trying too hard to sound casual. Mom's eyes shifted from him to me. My face, my hands, my neck. Something in her stilled, and then she spoke. Miriam, why are you wearing the same clothes from yesterday? Silence. Steve cleared his throat. She was just up late reading. She must have fallen asleep. But Mom wasn't listening to him anymore. She was looking at me. And she saw it. Not the clothes. Not the hair. Not even the hickey peeking just beneath my collarbone. She saw it in my eyes. The guilt. The horror. The truth. No, she whispered, barely a sound. You didn't. She turned to Steve. Tell me you didn't. He said nothing. That was all the answer she needed. I'll never forget what happened next. She didn't scream. Didn't cry. She just backed away slowly, like something inside her had snapped clean in half. Like the floor beneath her feet had disappeared. Then she walked out of the house, out of our lives, and left behind nothing but silence. The kind that doesn't just speak. It screams. Have you ever imagined yourself in this kind of situation? What did you do about it? Subscribe to this channel and hit on notifications for more interesting stories like this.